Hello, hello. This is Ramsey Dewey, testing out this microphone. Please let me know if the microphone is coming through, if the sound is coming through. Can you hear me? Hello, hello. Somebody please let me know in the comments if you can hear me. Looks like there are a few people chatting in this live chat, so yeah. Hello, hello. Again, testing the microphone. Please let me know if you can hear me. Otherwise, I will not know. A bit quiet, but you can hear. Ooh. Interesting. Let's try something. How about now? How about if I speak directly into the microphone? How is that? Testing, testing. Crank the volume. I don't have a volume switch here. Okay. That's better? You can hear me? You can hear the Hater Sensei Grandmaster Chosen One. Yep, there we go. Oh, sweet. My kids are in the chat. Watch your language, folks. Okay, our very first question is in this live Q&A. Welcome to this Q&A live with Ramsey Dewey here in Shanghai, China. Is bench pressing useful for MMA? Bench pressing is a great exercise. How much athletic crossover does it have in mixed martial arts? Not a great deal. Anything that makes you a better athlete makes you a better fighter, but the bench press specifically, not a great deal of athletic crossover to mixed martial arts. Is it worth doing? Sure. Is it going to make you a better fighter by itself? No, not really. Angry Engineering has the right idea. He says, I'm thinking deadlifting, squats, presses and rows, that sort of thing. Yeah. The postural lifts, the ones that make your posture stronger, squatting, deadlifting, and pulling exercise, rows, pull-ups, these are exceptional exercises for combat sports. Is it too late to do MMA at age 21? No, you're just a baby kid. Your brain hasn't even fully developed until your mid-20s, like age 25, age 26. Why would you think it's too late at age 21? You're not over the hill, man. There's some white noise in my audio today. That is interesting. Let me see if we can get rid of that white noise. One moment. I'll be right back. There's only so much we can do about noise and volume and stuff during these live broadcasts, especially since I'm using a microphone plugged straight into my phone with no preamp whatsoever, so there's very little that I can do. Excuse me. About the situation. How about now? Is that better? So you might notice I'm at a different studio than the one I usually do these chats from. A bit better. Okay, great. Because that's about as good as it's going to get today. It's about as good as it's going to be. So let's take some questions. Oh, we need a sparring match between Ramsey Dewey and Hard to Hurt. That'll be fun. It'll be fun to spar with Mike. See how he matches up. It would be a very, very big size difference. Huge size difference, man. Mike's a bit on the smaller end. I'm 6'1", about 220 pounds. Anyway. But friendly sparring, sure, that could be educational for all involved. What other questions? Okay. Can you do a video on Tarang Darajat, please? I have no idea what that is. Please let me know if you have a video link to whatever that is. Send it to me, I'll take a look, and I might just let you know what I think. Sounds like it's, I'm guessing that's some sort of martial art from a country I'm not familiar with. All right, the questions are finally starting to pour in. Great. Coach, D. Jordan asks, do you have any tips on getting over the fear of public transportation? Something bad almost always happens on the bus where I live. That's interesting. Where do you live, man? Where do you live? Public transportation here in my city in Shanghai is exceptional. It's amazing. The buses are great. They've got a whole web of buses that go all over the metro. The subway is phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. High-speed trains are amazing. So I have no fear of public transportation, but there are some sketchy places out there with some sketchy public transit. So how do you get over the fear of that? Okay, the first thing I thought about, I made this video years ago. Somebody asked me, how do I get over the fear of fighting? And my answer was, prepare to die. Accept the fact that one day, not necessarily in a fight, but one day you're going to die. And I think this applies to all kinds of fear. So ultimately, fear comes down to that unknown, that fear of death. So, what are you going to do about stepping on a bus with a bunch of sketchy people who might just murder you? Well, get yourself right with God, friend. Prepare to die. Also, man, it's not worth walking around. I field a lot of self-defense questions. I'm not a self-defense coach, but a lot of people ask me these self-defense questions, like, what should I do just in case a bad guy jumps out and does this and that and the other? Should I walk around paranoid all the time? No. No. Don't be paranoid. If it's a terrible way to live your life, walking around in a state of paranoia as if the bad guys are going to jump out and get you at any moment. Live your life on your own terms, man. Okay, what else do we have? All right, Bing Sue wants to know, he's phrasing this as a Mormon question. I guess he's doing this to try to get my attention. How does one fight like an effective counter-striker, Ramsey? Conor McGregor, for example. Some basic principles, please. How do you fight as a counter-strike? That's an excellent question. Because counter-striking is, as far as striking goes, the most effective way to hit and not get hit. So, how do you do it? You're welcome, by the way, D. Jordan. Man, you gotta practice essentially biting down on your mouth guard, accepting the fact that you might get hit, and you probably will the first 100 times you try this. And when you see a tell that the other guy is throwing a strike at you, you throw one at him. What are counter-strikes? The right cross, that is a counter-strike by definition. The check hook, overhand right, a teep, push kick, those are all excellent counter-strikes. So when you feel that tell that your opponent is throwing a strike at you, those are all excellent. So if you can read somebody throwing a round kick at you, like their lead right, their rear right round kick if they're an orthodox fighter. Okay? Two great counter strikes to that as soon as you feel that tell. Overhand right or a teep. When they're up on one leg, that is an excellent time, probably the best time to apply a push kick. But yeah, you have to bite the bullet on that one. You have to take some risks in sparring, which is why I always tell you, go light, because if you go heavy, if you go hard and try this out, you're going to get PTSD. You got to start light. Do it right. Go light in sparring, man. That way you can afford to make 100 mistakes in a row before you get it right. You cannot afford 100 mistakes in a row going hard. You'll get killed. Simply not going to happen. Low audio. I have no idea why that is. Why do we have low audio? No idea. Well, it's the audio that we have, so yeah, do with it what you will. What other questions do we have? When throwing a left hook, should you turn your head or leave your head stationary? Why would you turn your head? Like, why would you throw a left hook like that? That would make no sense. Or like that, even worse. No, don't turn your head when you throw a left hook. Okay? Essentially, the head is going to stay in this position. Maybe I should stand up and do this. I'll give you a little demo. Hold on. We can do this. I got a little more room in this room. Did I tell you? I changed apartments, moved to a bigger apartment. Now I've got a bigger studio, so I can stand up. Check this out. I'll give you a little left hook demo. Okay. Trying to get this microphone up here. Get this chair out of the way. Okay. Now, this would be better if you could see the whole body. But as I throw the left hook, my arm itself only moves about that much. Okay? You see that? The arm comes up here in this cross-frame position, goes from an open hand to a closed fist, and the power is coming from not the head turning or anything like that. I'm keeping my head up here. The head is protected on two sides, on one side with my left shoulder and on the other side with my right hand. Anytime we throw a punch, one side of your chin is covered with your shoulder of the punching arm, and the other side is protected here, right? That's included in a hook, okay? So when we throw a left hook, I'm going to pull the right shoulder back violently. I'm going to turn the legs a little bit. There are a bunch of different footwork patterns I can use for this, okay? But essentially that's what's happening. The head will not turn. Don't flip your head around. That's silly. That's going to essentially expose your chin to get hit. So we don't want to do that. All right. What just happened there? All right. Let's come on back. Have I had a student with chronic fatigue? We just got a super chat. I don't believe so. I'm not too familiar with the idea of chronic fatigue. I think my sister-in-law had that. I'm not sure how she got over it, but I've never had to deal with a student who had chronic fatigue, if that's your issue. Sorry to hear about that, so I'm not an expert in that field, unfortunately. Here's an interesting question from D. Jordan, who says, do you think that fighters that eat unhealthy when not encamped negatively influence people that follow them? The reason I'm taking this question is because there was every now and then there's a popular fighter or athlete, usually a jiu-jitsu athlete, who has a lot of success. He's a great technician, usually a young guy in his early to mid-20s. And they say something like, oh, they survive on pizza and candy and garbage and nothing else. And I think this can send the wrong message to a lot of people. Because they think, well, this guy, he's a professional athlete, he's highly successful, and therefore I can do what he does and have the same results. And no. Absolutely not. So yeah, I think it definitely can send a negative message. There are some people who will succeed in spite of the stupid things that they do. Right? So if you hear about an athlete who has a diet of pizza and candy and garbage like that, and and that's it, and he's having success. He is succeeding in spite of his diet, not because of it. All right. We got another question from Mega Matt, who says, when throwing a left hook, should you turn your head or leave your head stationary? We literally just answered this question. I stood up and gave you a demo. No, don't turn your head. That would be silly. I notice Master Wong does that in some of his videos. He'll flip his head around when he's throwing punches. It's weird, it's bad, it's wrong, it'll get you killed in a fight. Don't do that. Where do you hold your hands when you block strikes? I have heard of touching your eyebrows with your index fingers. Angry Engineering asks this question. Well, it depends. There are a lot of different ways to block strikes and a lot of different guards. So it depends on the strike. If you got a high guard like this, you can cover up by pinching the forearms together. You can parry a punch like that. You can block a punch with the palm, almost like holding a focus mitt. You can block a hook with the arm up. Just shift your fingers through your imaginary hair and take the blow on the arm, on the forearm right there, instead of on the side of the chin. You can block a kick, a head kick, like that with two arms, one around the back of the head here and the other right there. You can block with a crab guard like that. You can block with your shoulder. You can block with this forearm here if you're using a Philly shell. Okay, there are lots of different ways to block. So where should you keep your hands at depends entirely on the type of block, entirely on the type of guard that you're using. So yeah. Am I still on lockdown? No, I am no longer on lockdown here in Shanghai. So that ended a while back, and yeah, I've been pretty busy changing apartments. I moved to a different apartment, so haven't had a chance to make too many videos in the last couple of weeks because of that. All right, we have a super chat from Voodoo2130 who says, "Hi coach, what should a fighter do after winning a competition? A lot of people talk about how to handle a loss, but I haven't seen a lot on how to handle a win. Many thanks." Ooh. How do you handle a win? Ooh. It's a good question. And the first thing that comes to mind, there's a story about Marcelo Garcia. He's one of my favorite grapplers. And this is a story that one of his students told. I don't remember all the details, but they were at a competition. Marcelo competed. It was like a world championship or something. And Marcelo wins. And you know, they do that pretty standard thing, like shake hands with everyone, like, yeah, good job, good effort, everyone. And they get in their van or their bus and they start to leave. And they notice that on the way out, there was somebody whose car had broken down. Marcelo, according to his student, got out and attempted to help these people after just winning this world championship. So, forget yourself and go to work, man. Whether that means just get in the gym and get ready for the next one, or don't take yourself so seriously that you're like, oh, I won a world championship, I'm above everybody. Well, the lesson I pick up from Marcelo Garcia there, one, be a decent person, but two, you're never above anybody else on this planet. So he saw some random person, had nothing to do with this jiu-jitsu competition. They probably didn't even know what jiu-jitsu was, or who Marcelo Garcia was, or that he was now a world champion, and he gets out and helps them get their car going when it's broken down. So, a great lesson there. Do not rest on your laurels. Do you know that expression? That comes from the ancient Greek Olympics. The ancient Greek Olympians, when they won, the only prize they would get would be a crown of laurel leaves. And the expression rest on your laurels means I won the Olympics once, and therefore I'm just gonna coast the rest of my life. I'm good. You're not. You're not good. You're not good enough, guys. So what do you do after the war? You get ready for the next one. Good question. D. Jordan has his first MMA fight in December. Do you have any advice? Get out there and train, dude. Listen to your coach. Pay attention. And when you get in there, be aggressive and finish like this. Hands raised at the end. Simple way to win, man. Remember what the referee says, protect yourself at all times. That's not a throwaway line, that's a line you need to take to heart. Protect yourself at all times during that fight. Ricardo Silva's in the chat. He's finally here live. Thanks for being here, Ricardo. Who cuts my hair? I do, believe it or not. I give myself this incredible, intricate haircut on a regular basis. Okay, DD Music says, what do you do if the martial art you want to learn is not available to you? If you want to learn capoeira, Taido, Muay Thai, etc., but there aren't any schools nearby, you do what you can with what you have. When I was young, I wanted to learn martial arts, but I grew up in a small farming town and there were no martial arts schools at all. So what did I do? I went to the local library. I checked out all the books I could find on martial arts. I read them, I studied them, and I practiced at home as much as I could by myself. And when I finally moved away from home, went to college, I found a martial arts school, and I was thinking I wanted to take a karate class, because in my mind that was like the martial art I wanted to learn, but I couldn't find one. Instead I found a taekwondo school. And you know what I did? I did what I could with what I had. So that's what you do, man. You do what you can with what you have. Martial arts styles, all these names, capoeira, Muay Thai, Taido, karate, taekwondo, etc., they are labels. They're labels for different approaches to striking and grappling, basically. So you should be more concerned about some really rudimentary ideas rather than styles and names and labels. Can you wrestle? Can you do submission fighting? Can you intelligently defend yourself in a striking context? Can you box? Can you kick? Can you defend yourself against that stuff? If the answer is no, no label or name of a style is going to save you. All right, what else do we have? Ooh. So many questions, it's hard to pick one. How did I grow such a gigabat Chad beard? It looks good, dewy. Thanks, it's very simple. You simply don't shave and a beard comes out. Lord Payne really wants to know what I think of Jack Dempsey's form of throwing straight punches, aka corkscrew. Corkscrewing a punch. What do I think, man? If you followed this channel for any meaningful amount of time, you know that Jack Dempsey is my favorite boxer, and he wrote my favorite book on martial arts training of all time, Championship Fighting, Explosive Punching and Aggressive Defense. Go check that out. It's free. You can read that online for free. Download the PDF or buy a paperback copy for about $6 or $7 on the internet. It's public domain, guys. So there's no excuse not to read that book and familiarize yourself with it. So what do I think of Jack Dempsey and the way he punched and the way he taught? I think he was great. Merson Kerr says, I just started MMA. I had my first class. Any advice for a beginner? Keep showing up. Keep training. Keep doing it. I assume your goal as a beginner is to get better, to become competent, and perhaps to gain the skills that it takes to be a fighter, whether you want to fight professionally or not. But yeah, keep showing up. That's it. Just keep going and come with questions too. Come with questions. If things aren't working out for you, ask yourself why. Okay? A lot of times a coach after teaching a technique, he'll say, are there any questions? Or after class, are there any questions? And everybody just stands there with their lips sealed and they won't say anything because they don't want to sound like an idiot. Sound like an idiot. Don't be afraid. So ask lots of questions. If you don't ask the questions, you won't find the answers. Sweet, we got a super chat from, my friend Feng. Hey Feng, how's it doing? How are you doing? Can barely talk today. He says, hi coach, Feng here. It seems like Musashi's two sword styles in historical European martial arts is called sword and dagger. Do you know anything about how to pull that off? Oh, okay. So Miyoto Musashi was famous for fighting with two swords, and generally he would fight with either the, what do you call it, the katana, the daikatana, and the wakazishi, or however you pronounce that. That's like the shorter sword and the longer sword together. Or sometimes he would fight with two long swords. Sword and dagger is a little bit different because that is literally fighting with a long sword or a rapier and a dagger or a dirk. So the length of that historical European martial arts style is quite a bit different. In fact, if you're interested in seeing that in like live sparring, there are a number of great HEMA channels here on YouTube. I would recommend, let me see if I can get this name right, the Society of Historical Fencing. I think that's what they're called. They do live sparring with all kinds of different weapons, including sword and dagger sessions. They have a number of those on their channel, so go check that out and you can see how that works out live. They also have some sparring sessions with katana as well, sometimes katana against European swords. So that's some fascinating stuff. That's a channel I follow because I have an interest in that sort of thing. I've got that nerdy interest in historical European martial arts as well. But how do you pull that off? Yeah, basically, sword in your lead hand, in your power hand, and dagger in the offhand. So instead of using a buckler or a shield or a cloak or whatever you have in your offhand, it's a dagger. So how would you use that in a real fight? Essentially what that comes down to when you enter into a bind, if you don't know what that is, a bind is when the swords cross, so you're not able to swing the swords around anymore at that moment until you unbind or uncross the swords. Essentially when there's a bind with the sword in the power hand, but you have a dagger in the backhand, then you can start stabbing and cutting with the dagger at short range. So that was the advantage of the sword and dagger style. All right, what else do we have? Angry Engineering says, is my training partner a douchebag when he kicks me, when he head kicks me? Your training partner's head kicking you, okay. Well, I suppose that depends. Depends on how you have agreed to spar beforehand. If you have agreed no head kicks and he head kicks you, then that's kind of a jerk move, right? If you have agreed beforehand, head kicks are okay, and he head kicks you, then that's okay because that's what you agreed to. If you agreed light contact and he's trying to knock you out with head kicks, then obviously that's not okay. If you have agreed to full contact fighting, then obviously it's okay. So make sure that anytime you spar, that both you and your training partners are on the same page before you start sparring. There are a lot of injuries, a lot of heartache, a lot of anger and resentment that could be easily avoided if people would just do that. Just come to an agreement before you spar, not during, not after. There's no time for that. Okay, Topher wants to know, Ramsey, do you think Greco-Roman wrestling has applicability for practical self-defense use against an opponent with a knife? How many knife fights are you guys getting into? Man, do you ever watch any of those knife self-defense video parodies that Jordan Chow and I do? Where Jordan Chow plays the knife-wielding maniac, and he takes that knife and just goes like a sewing machine and stabs me like 10,000 times in under a minute? Okay, we play those up as comedy, but the reality is when there are knife attacks, that's pretty much what they look like. How many times have you heard, well, I don't know how many times you've heard, but I've heard this a lot. When somebody is stabbed to death, it's like they were stabbed 300 times. 300 times. Knife-wielding maniacs are a real thing, man. Fortunately, they are the minority of humans out there, but they do exist. And yeah, man, if you are unarmed, the best thing you can do against a knife is put physical distance as much as possible, as quickly as possible between you and that blade. Greco-Roman wrestling is a fantastic martial art. Contrary to what the name says, it comes from France, not Greece, not Rome. It's a French wrestling style. If you don't know what that is, that means you can attack the upper body, not the lower body. You can't do a single leg or a double leg takedown. Similar to judo, it's kind of like judo but without the gi. So you can only attack the upper body. Upper body throws, upper body takedowns, body locks, over-unders, underhooks, etc. Headlocks, and so on. That's how you get the other guy to the floor. Is that good against a knife? It's good against an unarmed opponent who isn't as good at Greco-Roman wrestling as you. Man, if you want to fight somebody with a knife, even a rudimentary weapon that allows you to put physical distance between you and the other guy, is far superior than any martial art. Okay, what else do we have today? We had a question about Leandro Lowe's untimely death. Yeah, I heard about that. Yep, everybody heard about that in the jiu-jitsu community. Absolute travesty, man. I guess from what I understand, he was at a nightclub. There was some sort of dispute over, I don't know what. There was a bit of a tussle. Leandro Lowe took this guy down, who was an off-duty police officer out of uniform, pinned him on the floor for a bit, then let him back up, and the off-duty officer took out his gun and shot him point blank in the head. So, sad, sad day, man. So what are we going to do about that, man? What are we going to do about that? Okay. Shaheen Keller says, a new training partner in sparring started to blast me yesterday. I asked him to regulate himself politely numerous times, but he kept throwing, so I turned up and put him down. Was this too much, coach? Well, sounds like you asked the man nicely, and you said it multiple times, and he did not, and so... Well, you got a couple of options in that situation. Either you can reciprocate and go the same level he does and potentially knock him out or risk injuring yourself, or you can turn and walk away. Was it too much? Well, you gave him the type of fight that he was showing up for, apparently. Now you have to ask yourself, is that something you're going to continue to do? Or are you going to knock out everybody who goes a little bit too hard? every new training partner that walks into the gym, new guys generally don't know how to control themselves, to be honest. So, as a coach, I take this as a challenge to see how much I can control myself and control a wild person who has zero control over the power without taking any injuries myself and without injuring my training partners. So, don't necessarily feel bad about what you did. Again, it sounds like you intelligently defended yourself, but next time, and if you keep training, there will be a next time, because the new guys will come in again and again, and they will have zero control. Or they might think, I'm going light. Meanwhile, they are punching with concussive force trying to take your head off. Because they don't know. Most new guys don't know. Some of them do. Some of them do. Some of them will deliberately try to murder you in as much as they can get away with it. And, I'll trust your judgment. Trust your gut about that. But, yeah, man. If we go around knocking out every new training partner, we're not going to have a lot of new training partners. So, understand when you need to walk away from the situation and when you need to physically defend yourself and potentially take that other guy out, if the situation calls for it. I would say the overwhelming majority of the time, sparring situations like that in the gym can be resolved without anybody getting hurt. Especially if you have other training partners there. If there's somebody that you trust to spar at the level that you want to spar at, say, hey, I'm not going to spar with you today. I'm going to go spar with him instead. Bye. Maybe try that next time. See how it works. Have I ever watched any kind of anime stuff? You mean those Japanese cartoons? No, not really. Just a few recommended by viewers of this channel, saying, "Hey, can you do a review on the MMA fights shown in Kengan Ashura?" That Japanese one where they have these secret underground death fights. I did a couple of videos on that. I also did a video on what was it called? All-Rounder Meguru. It's about this girl who becomes an MMA fighter. These are manga, I think. But outside of those reviews, no, I don't watch anime, Japanese cartoons, whatever you want to call them, or read manga. But apparently there's a whole genre of that stuff about martial arts. So yeah, if there's something you want me to review, let me know. I might take a look. Matthew J.H. wants to know, what is a McDojo in my opinion? Basically it's a bad martial arts school that tries to exploit people for profit. That's about it. Bad martial arts school that exploits people for profit. Okay. Mr. Unknown wants to know, how should an aggressive fighter spar without hitting hard? Did you know you can spar aggressively without knocking out your training partners and without hitting hard and without even injuring them? It's pretty simple. You go the exact same way, you move the exact same way that you would if you're fighting, except you take the edge off. So if you got boxing gloves, this is very simple. Instead of squeezing your fist on impact, you don't. You keep it open. So you go just as fast, right? You land the shots, but you pull them. and you don't do the damage. That's it. And you just keep going. But coach, what if my training partners don't react the same way? They won't respect the power. No, they won't. But you know what happens when you fight for real? Generally, your opponents don't respect your power in a fight unless you knock them out anyway. Why? Because they're high on adrenaline, so the pain doesn't register. So you cannot just expect a certain reaction from a certain attack. You just cannot expect, if I hit him this way, he will do exactly this thing. No, he won't. He won't. Look, the way your opponent reacts in light sparring is going to be a whole lot more similar to the way an opponent reacts in a real fight than it would be if you were going hard in the gym. I mean, think about this. Think about groin strikes for a minute. Now, I imagine you're not sparring with groin strikes unless you're one of those Krav Maga maniacs, but look, if you have accidentally been hit in the groin while sparring in the gym, your reaction is probably a lot more adverse than it was in a real fight. In a real fight, unless you were trying to get the attention of the referee because you wanted a 5-minute break, you probably didn't react much because you realized you just have to keep going. The adrenaline is making you high, so the pain doesn't register, so you just keep going. But in the gym, what do? You lay down on the ground, you're like, oh, dude, you just kicked me in the groin, come on, man, not cool. It's a physiological and psychological difference between sparring and fighting. Again, in fighting, to stop a guy, you basically have to kill him, or knock him out, or submit him, basically. You have to control that other person. In sparring, it's different. In sparring, to stop the guy, you can just say, hey, let's time out. You can't do that in a fight. So it's a radically different thing. So how do you get aggressive in light sparring? You just get aggressive. You lay it on thick, as in volume, not power. Do you understand the difference? You get relentless and overwhelm the guy psychologically rather than by inflicting damage. If you want to be aggressive, that means you control the action. That means you are landing the overwhelming majority of the strikes. That means you are winning the grappling exchanges. You are getting the takedowns. You are dominating position. And you are putting the other guy in positions where you can hurt him and he can't hurt you. But it's sparring, so you choose not to hurt each other. You take the edge off the strikes. You pull the punches, the kicks, etc. If you don't know how to do that, just practice with a heavy bag. Get up to a heavy bag. Get close but not touching. Close but not touching. Touch the skin, but not the muscle. Touch the muscle, but not the bone. It's a unique skill set that takes just as much practice as actual fighting. But, it's something you're going to have to get used to if you want to be able to spar as much as you need to in order to get as good as you need to be. Otherwise, you're just going to have to pay a whole bunch of self-sacrificial training partners to come in and get beaten up by you, and you're not going to find a lot of those who are willing. Keegan Caldwell says, any advice on wrapping up a staph infection and training where you can still use that arm? Dude, if you haven't already, go get that treated. Go get some antibiotics, get it treated. That can kill you. Get a staph infection treated. Don't worry so much about the combat addiction that keeps calling you back to the gym. I gotta train every single moment possible. Because if you're dead, that's not going to happen. Get that staph infection treated. If you don't realize how serious a staph infection is, trigger warning, this is a disgusting image. Google search Kevin Randleman staph infection. The late, great Kevin Randleman. and you will see what that did to his abdominal cavity. It's gross, man. Brace yourself. Get that treated. That is the priority. Not covering it up, getting it treated. Tonjevic says, I have a lingering strain in my calf that I keep re-injuring. Should I just take time off to let it heal completely, or is there a way to train with the injury? Well, stop doing that thing that you're doing that gets it injured. Now, maybe that's sparring, maybe it's kicking, maybe it's whatever it is that you're doing in your classes or your training is causing that injury. Stop doing that thing that's causing the re-injury. Keep training in other ways. That's probably going to be strength and conditioning in the meantime while you're letting that heal. But if you keep re-injuring it, it's not going to heal. Okay? And if you just sit on your butt, you're going to get weak, you're going to atrophy. So, do some strength and conditioning in the meantime. It's a very simple thing to do. Keep the blood flowing. That is going to allow you to heal faster. And it's going to allow you to be stronger and more athletic when you do get back in the gym. Zachary Thompson says, RD, when are you doing a biblical series? Love your talks on Christianity. Go check out my other channel, Ramsey Reads the Bible. Every other video is a talk on the Bible there. So I do two types of videos on that, reading a chapter from the Bible and then giving biblical commentary. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, go check out my other channel. I do have a few videos planned about subjects along that lines. I'm not sure which channel I'm going to put them on, but we'll see. So it's not directly biblical commentary, but it's related to that sort of thing. So we'll see where I put those later. All right. The End King says, hey Ramsey, why do we never see lariats or clotheslines in MMA fights? Is it just a bad idea to try to do that? You mean like sidestepping the guy and bringing your arm out here, boom, like Steven Seagal did in those movies? It's because that's a terribly telegraphed move that nobody who is intelligently defending themselves would set themselves up for. That's it. Nobody would give you that angle in a fight. Nobody would allow you to do that. Now, are there situations where you could do that against another human being? Yes, there are. And the situation is not where you have two professional fighters standing across the ring from them, and the referee asks each of them, are you ready? Are you ready? And both of those fighters say honestly, yes, I am ready. And then they go out knowing exactly where their opponent is, exactly where those attacks are coming from. They're not going to sidestep with an arm out here and clothesline the guy. It simply will not happen. So that's why you don't see it. Smash Mouth wants to know, how long did it take to recover from my shoulder injury? Let's see, how long ago was it? It was like almost 3 years ago, I think. Back in 2019, I dislocated my left shoulder. Does it still bother me? It basically took about 2 years to get back to about 100%, even though like it's not as strong in some ways as it was before. I can't do as many pull-ups. I can't deadlift as much. Holding like a low bar squat is kind of painful in certain ways. So it's hard to say I'm at 100%, but I feel like I can train back up to that level at this point. So yeah, it took a while. And we're talking about consistent rehab, like rehabilitation exercises on the regular. So take your injuries seriously, guys. Does a tall fighter have an advantage over less tall people if he understands how to use that advantage? Advantages are only advantages if you know how to use them. I remember my very first professional kickboxing match. I was fighting a shorter guy, and I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I didn't know how to box. I came straight from a taekwondo background, amateur taekwondo, straight into professional kickboxing. Not the best idea, but I did it because I didn't know any better. And I went in there without a corner man, and the house corner man is there coaching me, and he says, "Oh man, you got a huge reach advantage over this guy. Just pick him off with your jab." I was like, "Jab? What is a jab? I don't know what that is." And yeah, I didn't know how to box at all back then. Anyway, so I go in there, and I have physical advantages over the guy, and he just outboxes me. Why? Because he had more experience. He had more experience in boxing, and he just lambasted me with punches, and I didn't know what to do. I couldn't use the reach advantage because I didn't understand it. Now, as I got more experienced, I started to understand my reach. And when I began to understand my reach, that changed everything. Everything. So you got to understand your reach, guys. Whether it's a long one or a short one, if you understand it and the other guy doesn't, there's a high probability you were going to outbox him. Samazar Ziggurat is 40 years old, 6'4", 340 pounds, big guy, okay. Am I too old and too big to get into MMA? Is my mobility going to be limited based on my size? Look, you're never too old to get out there and train, man. I'm 43 years old, okay? I've been doing this for a while. I know you're just wanting to get into it right now, and that's awesome. That's great. Are you too old to get out there and train, step into the gym, see what it's like, get stronger, get more fit, get better at it? No, nobody's too old for that. Are you too old to begin a professional fighting career? Who knows? Who knows? Some guys, as soon as they get out there and train and get those newbie gains out of the way, they have some wild epiphanies and they go out and do some amazing things. But the most important thing, just get out there and train. Right? Life already puts a bunch of limits on you. Right? You don't get to choose what genetics you get, who your parents are, where you're born, etc. But you do get to choose what you do with the time that you have here. So if you want to train, you want to find out what this MMA thing is all about, and whether or not it's something that's going to benefit you in your life, go try it. You don't need my permission. Dimensional Shade wants to know, how much of a difference does raw weight make? He says, I came to ask the same question as most people. Who would actually hit harder, a light, really explosive fighter or a heavier fighter? Like, how much of a difference does the weight make? Okay. The more you weigh, the more potential for damage you have on strikes. That doesn't mean the more damage you are going to do, because you do actually have to understand technique. If you have two fighters, a big heavy guy and a small little guy, and they both have good punching technique, the big heavy guy is going to be a significantly harder puncher. If you have a big dude who doesn't know anything about how to throw a punch, and a little dude who does, the little dude may well punch harder than the bigger guy. Not necessarily, but he just might. Got a friend, Johnny. He's a big dude. He's bigger than me. But he doesn't hit that hard. Why? Because he's just starting to learn how to box right now. And when he uses his fists to strike with, it's not that hard because he hasn't got the technique down. He doesn't know yet how to transfer his 110 kilos of body weight into his fists. When he does, when he figures that out, ooh boy, he's going to hit hard. But right now, he's still figuring it out. So it's a combination of things. It's a combination of physical attributes and technical proficiency. Alex Rautar says, would you advise against training striking or grappling to someone with shoulder hypermobility and a history of small injuries? Any experience with students? Kind of, yeah. I had a student once who was crazy double jointed in every joint, and you couldn't submit the guy with anything except a choke because his shoulders and elbows would bend around like octopus tentacles. So the most important thing you can do in that situation, especially if you're one of those hypermobile guys who's prone to injury, is get strong. Strength is what is going to keep you in one piece, basically. So focus on getting stronger. Okay. Would I advise against training? No. But train with the caveat of do your strength training too. Get stronger so you can stabilize your joints better. Name one thing off the top of your head that you can recall Bruce Lee doing in a movie that you think actually works, if possible. Screaming really loud. Ah! Yeah, that freaks people out. Seriously. Most people don't even think about using their voice in a fight. Most people don't. But there are a lot of very effective ways to use your voice in a fight. Tons of them, man, tons of them. Pretty much anybody who's done a traditional martial art like karate or taekwondo knows the kia, ha! You shout when you punch, and they give lots of reasons like that. You can project energy into the strikes, or you can scare people, or motivate yourself. Or, what very few people talk about, that ki-op is basically just forcing yourself to breathe, because when most people are in a tense situation like a fight, especially for the first time, they hold their breath. And they tire themselves out because they're not breathing. So making noise like that forces you to breathe. So what else does it do? There's that psychological aspect of it. Man, if you're screaming like a maniac, oh, that gets in people's heads for sure. I mean, everybody started paying attention when Conor McGregor started talking to his opponents before, during, after fights, getting in their heads with all his smack talk. I mean, the voice is a powerful weapon. Now, you can use it as noise, like Bruce Lee. You can use it as words, like Conor McGregor. You can use it mid-fight, like, oh man, remember when Khabib fought Conor McGregor and he started talking back to him as he was mollywomping the guy? And Conor's like, it's just business, it's just business. What was it Khabib said? He said something to him, like, where's your smack talk now? I don't know. Don't remember the quote. But it's not illegal for fighters to talk to each other. It's not illegal to use your voice. Holly Holm is a great example. If you watch her fights, she's always using that kyap, always using her voice, always regulating her breathing with her voice when she strikes. A lot of great ways to do that. Here's a self-defense technique for the streets for you. If you're clinched up with a guy, you can destroy his ears by screaming into them, like directly into them. If you want to break that clinch and they won't let you go, that's something you can do. Use your voice. How do you switch from being a nice guy to beating people as hard as you can in a cage fight? Well, you don't really switch. You don't really switch. You're not like Jekyll and Hyde, like, I'm a nice guy, la-di-la, I'm going to kill you now. No, that's not what happens. It's just, it's your job, so you go out there and you do it. Like, how many of you have jobs? How many of you ever worked at a restaurant, for example, as like a fry cook at a McDonald's or something like that? Some hamburger place, and your job is literally standing over the fryer, okay? And making sure those French fries don't burn, and that's it. And it's boring, and it's lame, and it's limiting. Is that you? No, that's your job. When you go to work, you stick those French fries in that fryer, and you make sure they don't burn. Then you take them out, and you pass them on to the kitchen crew, and they go out and serve them or whatever happens, right? But is that you? No, it's your job. How do you switch from being a regular nice guy to being a fry cook? You put on the apron, you go in the kitchen, and you go to work. Same thing in an MMA fight. How do you switch from being a civil law-abiding person who is decent to other human beings, who doesn't beat up the general public, but when you go to work and your job specifically is to fight another trained athlete who's trying to fight you, you just go to work. Forget yourself and go to work, man. That's it. Again, it's not a Jekyll and Hyde transformation. Now, at this moment in your life, you might not be psychologically capable of hitting someone or hurting someone, and I made a whole video about this. It's about 40 minutes long. Go watch it. It's called something like, what is it called? Oh man, it's one of my favorite videos. It was a section of a podcast with my friend Andrew, something about getting mean, flipping the switch. I don't remember. Just go watch my backlog of videos. Somebody saying I watched that video 10 times. What is it called? Yeah, anyway. Oh, you watched it. Great. Great. But yeah, most people, again, if they haven't trained to fight, if they haven't exposed themselves to violence over and over and over again in various degrees, if they haven't sparred a whole bunch of times, it's going to be a very foreign thing to punch or kick or try to hurt somebody else. And you just won't be able to psychologically bring yourself to do it. You won't. So you have to condition yourself through training. You go to the gym, you spar, you go through the drills, you go through the motions of laying your hands on another human being. So when fight time comes and you go to work, it's not different. It's not that different, right? You've been inside of a fight cage or inside of a boxing ring 1,000 times. You've sparred in that ring or in that cage 1,000 times. You spend 1,000 hours grappling and punching and grapple punching and grapple kicking and kick grappling or whatever it is you want to call it. And so you get in a fight and it's not foreign and strange and alien to you. Dimensional Shade says, Ramsey, me and my friends are constantly shoulder and body sparring, no hits to the head, pure body shot work. Is this actually good training or should we change something? That's a great way, a great intro to sparring. And I do that sometimes. I do that a lot with my students, especially the beginner boxer class, especially those guys who have zero self-control. I think that's something that Tony Jeffries recommends a lot. Like he says since retiring from fighting, he doesn't even do shots to the head anymore. It's always shoulder body sparring. Now, if you treat your shoulder as if it were your head, this changes the shoulder body sparring quite a bit. If essentially that's just you have two targets anywhere on any legal scoring area of the body in boxing and the shoulder, but treat your shoulder like it's your head. So you're going to slip this, well, a very similar way. So it's a great way to spar with very few injuries. And you can even put a little bit more power behind the shots, but again with very few injuries. Now, if you want to graduate to sparring with shots to the head, again, use an insane amount of control. Just imagine you're sparring with a baby. Did I see that Tony Jeffries started BJJ? He made a video about it. I saw the thumbnail. Haven't got around to watching the video yet, but that's fantastic that Mr. Jeffries is branching out, trying jiu-jitsu. That's awesome, man. I'll have to go check that one out. But yeah, man, I'm so glad that Tony Jeffries has had the type of success he's had on YouTube so far. And if you don't subscribe to his channel, go check it out. It's an excellent channel on boxing. Why? Why? Because for so long, the YouTube martial arts sphere was just absolutely dominated by all these bozos who didn't know a dang thing about fighting or boxing or grappling or anything, and somehow they managed to get millions of subscribers. And, oh man. Again, out of the top 5 martial arts YouTubers that have over 1 million subscribers, only one of them has ever been in a fight before. Who is that? You wonder? Shane Faison, the Fight Tips guy. He's the only one out of the guys who has over 1 million subscribers who makes martial arts technique videos. I'm not talking about martial arts commentary like Chael Sonnen, for example. But as far as just pure technique videos, the only one who's ever actually been in a fight before. So when you have a guy like Tony Jeffries, who's, you know, a former Olympian, world champion, etc., making good boxing technique videos, and he's finally getting hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and people are watching him and recognizing, oh, this is what the real thing looks like. Cool. That is fantastic. We need more guys like that. Oh, man. Speaking of Shane, man, something I've been wanting to talk about for a while. A number of viewers have asked me questions about the YouTube algorithm and noticing how a bunch of YouTubers have just lost a bunch of viewership. And yeah, man, this is... Maybe you haven't noticed it. I've noticed it on this channel. This channel has, how many, like 211 million subscribers, or not a million, 211,000 subscribers right now. And we're struggling to get 1,000 views on a video right now. Meaning, you know, according to analytics, it's like less than 0.1% of the subscribers are actually watching the videos right now. And this is kind of bizarre because, you know, like about a month ago, not a month ago, maybe 6 months ago, I could pretty much put out any type of video and it would instantly get like 10, 20, 30,000 views. But right now, man, it's, part of me just second guesses putting effort into making videos. It's like, hardly anybody's going to watch them right now. But this is not a Ramsey Dewey pity party, but I started looking around, seeing, is this happening to anybody else? And I looked over at other channels, and I noticed, yes, it is happening to other people. Like, take Shane Faison, for example. Right now, he is making, in my opinion, better content than he's ever made in his career. Like, he is. He's smarter, he's older, he's wiser, more experienced than he's ever been in his YouTube career. And he's got several million subscribers, and his videos are averaging like 10, 20,000 views. Meaning we have a tiny fraction of his subscriber base actually watching. And then, you know, I was just looking through just channel after channel after channel that I follow, and oh man, so many of them are just absolutely floundering in the views, and I'm wondering, what is this all about? But then I noticed other things like YouTube automatically unsubscribes me from channels that I follow on the regular. And those that I do follow, they do not appear in my subscription feed. Does this happen to you? It happens to me all the time. What else? I'm constantly getting comments from people saying, hey, why did you delete my comment? I don't delete comments on my channel. I don't. The YouTube robots, on the other hand, delete a lot. So, I don't know what's up with this. But yeah, there's there is something weird and goofy going on with the YouTube algorithm where subscribers are not being shown what they subscribe to, and yeah, what do we do about that? I don't know. In order to find the content that I want to find, I have to manually search for it, and even when I do that, it doesn't, I can write in like the exact name of the video I'm looking for, and I will get 50 other recommendations before it will show me the video I'm looking for. It's broken, man. The YouTube algorithm is broken beyond belief. Anyway, so Um, yeah, man, go support your favorite channels, man, because the YouTube robots will not. So you know, I like Shane. He's a good guy, and I hate to see the fact that he's making fantastic content right now, better than he's ever made before, and getting lower viewership than he's ever made before. And he's not complaining about this, so I'll complain for him. I'll complain for him because it's happening to him. It's happening to me. It's happening to a lot of us out there. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that. All right. Any other questions? That's right. The video was called How Fighters Develop Killer Instinct. So if you're wondering how do you get to the point where you're physically, psychologically able to hurt somebody in a fight, watch that video. How to Develop Killer Instinct. It's on my channel. Go look it up. And when the YouTube robots suggest, did you mean you want to watch this cute cat video instead? Just say no. Anton Cremo, thank you so much for the nice words. He says, hi, I'd just like to tell you how much you really helped me through dark times in the last 4 years. I'm happy you preach the ideology that you do. Thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you for following the channel for the last 4 years, my friend. And through the shadows, through the darkness, through the tough times, there are better times to come, my friend. Simon says, could I react to my martial combat fight? Again, I've made like 5 or 6 videos reacting and talking about that one. But that was a terrible fight, man. That was a absolute crap fight. So, I don't think any of the videos I made were labeled like my reaction to this terrible fight that I had in martial combat. So they might be kind of hard to find in that regard. It's, who knows, maybe I'll make a dedicated video talking about it, but it's not a good fight. Not a good fight. Do I do yoga or Pilates? Sure, yeah, I do a bunch of different yoga movements, stretches, and so on. That's all great exercise. Is wrestling more important than BJJ for MMA? Sort of, sometimes, in some ways. Wrestling is the art of position, whereas jiu-jitsu is the defensive aspect of grappling. So essentially, wrestling is the skill set you need to be effectively aggressive in the grappling exchange. It is the skill set you need to stay on your feet if that's where you want to be. It is the skill set to put the other guy on his back if that's where you want the fight to be. It is the skill set that you need to move where you want to be in the fight, to dictate the pace. And essentially that's how fights are won, through effective aggression or octagon ring cage control, whatever you want to call that. That means being the one in control of the fight. Wrestling does give you those skill sets. Jiu-jitsu is the defensive aspect of grappling. That's conditions. Because if you're fighting from guard, for example, that's purely defensive fighting. If you're fighting for a takedown, that's offensive fighting. So yeah, wrestling's super important, but how are you going to be a good MMA fighter without knowing how to do submission, grappling? Here's a very simple solution. Start every roll from your feet. Start every roll from the feet. Okay? Whether you are a guard puller, I just went 8-bit, 600 pixels. Well, I don't know what to do about that. Strange. Anyway, I was about to give you some sage advice, and we're about to wrap up here because I'm almost out of time for this Q&A. Defensive aspect of grappling jiu-jitsu. Even if you are a competition guard puller who will only compete in IBJJF rules, start every roll from the feet. If you are start every roll from the feet, and it forces you to work for at least a little bit every single time on your wrestling, at least a little bit. All right, guys, that is all the. I gotta go skate.